Well, what do you know? After the bloodbath that befalled us in last year's finale, Will Graham survived. In truth, the question of if Will survived was a pretty dead set one. Most viewers, including myself, expected Will to come out of the events alive. The lingering questions, however, remained over Jack, Alana and Abigail's heads. So who else did survive? I swear Brian Fuller is just toying with us here, because as it stands, Episode 2 held off once more on the fates of Jack and Alana. Instead, the episode focused heavily on Will and Abigail's connection. Now come on, admit it, whilst watching, who was suckered into believing that Abigail survived? I'll admit they had me going there for a while, as they spent at least a good 2/3 of the episode convincing us that she had. But as the episode went forward, heartbreakingly and sadly for Abigail, she was indeed a fatality of the events. Just to think, this episode spent most of its time devoting itself to giving Abigail back to us, only for its conclusion to take her swiftly away again, just like Hannibal did to Will. This episode certainly wasn't messing around though. No sooner than we found out that Will was alive was he in Palermo actively seeking to find Hannibal. Will ended up crossing paths with Chief Investigator Ronaldo Pazzi, a character who many movie and book readers could be very familiar with. When speaking to Will, Pazzi recalled some of his past, stating that 20 years ago he was on the tail of the Monster of Florence. The man left no evidence then, and he leaves no evidence now. Pazzi knew back then that the true killer was Hannibal, but no evidence stuck. And now with the killings he knows that the Monster of Florence has returned. So knowing this, I'm sure that Pazzi will begin to go out of his way to bring Hannibal to justice. Welcome to the top 5 moments of the episode, followed by the overall verdict. What else is going to be first on the list? We've been waiting for this answer for nearly a year now. Episode 1 intentionally left us hanging, while this episode answered only half the question. Will awoke from his coma confirming that he did indeed survive the events of last year's brutal finale, but on awakening, it turns out that he had a very special visitor.
Signor Graham, Chief Investigator Rinaldo Pazzi, Questura di Firenze.
Next up on the list, we meet someone who many of you may already be familiar with if you've read the novels, as we are introduced to Chief Investigator Rinaldo Pazzi.
You come to Palermo, and soon, very soon, a body is discovered.
That body left by Hannibal at the end of episode 1 was left there for Will. Hannibal may not have known if Will was there at the time, but he knew if he wasn't, eventually, he would find it.
He left us his broken heart.
He said he made a place for us.
The place wasn't made for you, Abigail.
Let's face it, most of us probably expected that Abigail wouldn't be walking away from last year's finale. And after spending plenty of time having us believe we were wrong in this case, we are revealed to the truth. Abigail was a figment of Will's imagination, his memory palace you could say, something which he learnt to use from Hannibal himself. As the episode begins to come to a close, Will knows that Hannibal is still in the area. And as Hannibal, Will and Pazzi are cautiously searching around, Will decided he had something to say directly to Hannibal.
Hannibal. I forgive you.
My overall verdict for this week's episode of Hannibal is a 9 out of 10. Last week served its purpose very well indeed. It showed us exactly what the good doctor was up to without anyone else's prying eyes. Now though, it was time to shift focus onto the other half of the two main protagonists. This week brought the teacup together, as we focused almost entirely on Will. Once again, we have no mention of either Alana or Jack, so you know now that Brian Fuller and his writers are just pulling on our emotion strings. They know we want the answers and we want them now, but they're having us wait. It's adding more and more tension. So who knows, will we even find out their fates next week? We'll just have to wait and see. So 8 months have passed, and after awaking from a coma, Will delves into his memory palace to find something that could possibly lead him to Hannibal. His hunch didn't take long to be confirmed, as the present that was left at the end of episode 1 was a broken heart left for Will to find. Now accompanying Will on his journey was what we were to believe was Abigail. This episode did a fantastic job of having us believe that Abigail survived. I mean, come on, if anyone could cut Abigail's neck to surgical precision for her to survive, it's got to be Hannibal, right? Even the conversations between Will and Abigail were having me believe that this wasn't all an elaborate imagination. But, as the episode was coming to its end, the brutal and heartbreaking truth was brought to light. Abigail died that fateful night, and the shot that showed Will being saved in contrast to Abigail who was losing her life is another example of how wonderful this show can convey emotion without even saying a word. Now, whilst in Palermo making his debut, we are introduced to Ronaldo Pazzi, someone who believes he has just what it takes to catch Hannibal. But he failed 20 years ago to catch the man, who at the time was known as the Monster of Florence. So, as Will states, what makes him think he's going to catch Hannibal this time around? Does he expect Will's total cooperation? Or is he hoping that Will is going to somehow lead him to Hannibal? It looks like Pazzi hopes that Will lead him to Hannibal, as Pazzi follows Will around the church. Will even tells Pazzi he was taking one hell of a risk. Pazzi doesn't know what side Will is on. Hell, Will doesn't even know what side he's on. Will came very, very close to finding Hannibal at the end there, who was returning to the scene of his crime. So with Hannibal now aware of Will's presence in the area, will he continue to draw his former friend closer and closer, or will he attempt to slip away, knowing that one false step could cost him his freedom? And I think all of us know the answer to that. Thank you very much for watching. Please leave a like, comment and subscribe if you enjoyed the review, and I'll see you next week.
I read all about your incarceration.
Keep reading. I was acquitted.